Hello friends, and welcome back to my channel. So today's video is all about how I am able to read faster and read more books. So I'm going to talk about the number one method that I've been using this year to increase both the amount of books that I was able to read and also the pace that I'm able to finish those books at. So I can finish a 1,000-page book in maybe 2 or 3 days. All right, so I'm just gonna begin with the tip right away. So my number one method for being able to read more books and to read faster is this. All I do is I listen to the audiobook while I am reading the book physically, and I play the audiobook at 2 times or 2.5 times speed. And that's it. That is how I've been able to read more books this year. Now, for the rest of this video, I'm gonna break this down. I'm going to talk about why I think it's been effective, how I've done it with fiction books and nonfiction books, how I'm able to obtain copies of the audio and physical book without breaking the bank. Because obviously if you're buying the same book twice over, that can get really expensive really fast, but I often don't need to do that. All right. So first, my experience with this method. So I started using this method about 1.5 years ago. And basically all the books that I've read so far in the year 2020, I've read using this method. And I've read several long books this year and also part of last year as well. And same thing, I've been using this method. Why I think this method is effective, a couple reasons. It drowns out distractions. So when I'm listening to my audiobook, I usually have a pair of headphones such as these over my ears, or I will have my little earbuds in. But either way, they're a signal to other people if they're around me to not bother me. And also it drowns out any noise that's going on around me. And this allows me to be able to read while I'm on my lunch break at work, for example, where normally there's a lot of chit chat going on around me, which of course, if I'm able to read at work and minimize the distractions from people around me, I can get more reading done. The second reason why I think this is so effective is because it forces me to keep up a reading pace that is consistent and faster than I can read if I am reading without the audiobook. So when I consume an audiobook at 2 times, 2.5 times speed, I'm forced to keep up with the voice that is going on in my head. Now, alone, this isn't really effective because if I'm just listening to the book at that fast speed, I am far more likely to just lose attention or not catch what they're saying. But if I'm reading along while the audiobook is playing at that speed, I'm still actively reading. It's just forcing me to read faster than I would if I didn't have that audiobook playing in my ears. The third reason why I think it's effective is that it prevents me from going back and rereading sections. Usually if I feel like I didn't quite understand something, I'll go back and reread. But sometimes I'll do this even when it's not necessary, especially when I'm reading fiction books. It's very rare that I need to go back and like read something again for understanding. So this prevents me from doing it. If I really need to do it, I just need to reach over and pause the audiobook. But because there's an action that's required, I only do it when it's absolutely necessary. Otherwise, I have to keep going with the flow of the audiobook. And then the fourth reason why I think this is so effective, I mentioned this earlier, I am consuming the book in 2 different ways. I'm both listening to it and I am reading it on my Kindle. And I think that this allows for even more active reading. So I'm far more likely to remember stories that I have both read and listened to than if I had just listened to it or if I had just read it. So it makes it more memorable. So now I'll get into doing this method with fiction books, which I've done it with lots of fiction books, especially fantasy books. So I actually I started reading the Sanderson novels, the Stormlight Archive. I think it was in December of last year. And I've gotten through all 3 books. I think I got through all 3 books in like a month. With some breaks just because they are very long books. But for all 3 of those books, I read the book while listening to the audiobook. And the biggest advantage of listening to the audiobook while reading a fiction book is that the audiobook, it adds a performance element that you're not getting if you're just reading the fiction book. So the narrators, they're voice actors. So they're able to add so much more character to the characters in the novel, whether it's their voices or their catchphrases, things that they say, that makes the book so much more enjoyable. It's also much more engaging as well. Some books that I've enjoyed using this method with that were fiction. So I mentioned the Stormlight Archive by Brandon Sanderson. So that was The Way of Kings, Words of Radiance, and Oathbringer. And I've already pre-ordered the fourth book, Rhythm of War. I've pre-ordered the audiobook already. So when it's released, I will have that in my Audible library. I also read some of the really long Stephen King novels, The Stand, It, using this method. And not only did it make it easier to get through those books, but also the Stephen King, the way he writes characters, they have some really funny catchphrases, and the voice actors were able to really bring those to life. So it was very enjoyable to read those books while listening to the audiobooks. And last but not least, I actually had a goal of reading like 2 classics this year. I don't know why I decided to do that. I've done one so far, so I read Jane Eyre earlier in the year, and I think that if I did not have the audiobook companion to that, I don't know if I would have made it through that book. I mean, it was great, and I actually enjoyed it, but I enjoyed it so much more, and it made it so much easier for me to finish it with the audiobook companion. Now, talking about doing this with nonfiction books, so books that are more informational or autobiographies. The benefit of doing this with specifically autobiographies is usually the person that is reading the audiobook is the author. And this is not just autobiographies, this is also nonfiction books. So I feel like when I am listening to the author read the book, I am hearing it in the way that they intended. So they're emphasizing certain things that they want you, the reader, to really take away from their work. Another reason that using audiobooks, listening to nonfiction books, is that it just makes it a little bit more personal. So some of these books are filled with data, they're filled with information, they're filled with studies, and listening to someone read it while you are reading it adds a little bit of human touch to it as well. Third, and probably the most important thing with nonfiction books that I find myself doing, is I have a tendency to go back and reread something that I already read. And sometimes I actually did understand it. I just thought it was important, so I'd go back and reread it, but it prevents me from progressing, especially because I can highlight things in the book on my Kindle, and I can just go back and read my highlights later. All right. Now, the next thing I want to get into is how I'm able to do this, obtain copies of the audiobook and the physical or ebook copy of a book without breaking the bank. Number one answer is my public library. So my public library allows us to download both an audiobook and an ebook. And sometimes if the book is not a super popular title, both versions are available and I can download them both at the same time. Another way that I've been able to do this is with Kindle Unlimited. So the Kindle Unlimited, the way the membership works is that you pay $10 a month and you have access to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of books. And a lot of those books actually have audiobook companions. So there are several books this year that I read where I got the audio and the physical book through my Kindle Unlimited subscription. And if you're really prudent, you can get a Kindle Unlimited subscription for less than the actual price. So they regularly run promotions where it's 99 cents for 3 months. So if you want to get a lot of Kindle books read in that time frame, you can. And then once your 3 months is over, you can just cancel the membership. The third thing that I do is I do have an Audible membership. I have the yearly membership where I can get 12 audiobooks every single year. That allows me to save some money because when you buy that particular membership, the cost per audiobook is lower than if you stick to the regular monthly membership. So I get all 12 credits at once, and I still have 8 credits available because, like I said, I go through my library first, and if I can't get it through them, that's when I use my Audible credit. And we're about halfway through the year, so I've got a lot of credits remaining for books that if I can't get through my library, I can just use my Audible membership. All right, so that was my tip on how to get through more books and get through them faster. Basically, just get the audiobook and listen to it at 2 times speed while you are also physically reading the book. Let me know in the comments below if you've ever tried this, if it's something that you want to give a shot. Definitely look to some of the resources that I talked about earlier so that you don't have to spend a lot of money to try this method. And let me know how it works out. If you're planning to try it, if you did try it, and if you liked it or you didn't like it, or if you have a different method for reading more books and getting through them faster. I strongly urge everyone to at least try it, especially if you can get a free copy of an audiobook through your library or through the Audible website. I think they always offer like 2 free audiobooks for the very first time that you sign up. up. And that's it for this video, guys. So give the video a thumbs up if you really enjoyed the content, and feel free to subscribe to this channel as I upload more videos on book reviews and just my tips for reading more books and learning and growing with me, Bintou, here on this channel. Thanks, everyone.